We're here today to go over Dave's car and the safety things that Dave had in his car to help save him from any kind of injuries, to hopefully use this information in the future to help other people with their cars and get the information out there that we maybe need to go to that next step to make sure the cars are safe to do these kind of events. The thing that Dave brought up was the helmet. If you watch a video, we just noticed that the Nissan, when it took off, he never put his visor down. Through that whole race, that 200-mile-an-hour race, never had his visor down. Them are the things we've got to catch, because as Dave will explain, you got to have it down. If you look inside that car, how much glass is flying around in that car, if you don't have it down. But yeah, Dave, thank you for taking the time and letting everybody see your car and explain some of the safety stuff that he's done to it that helped him survive.
The gauges, look at the amount of dirt and glass that's flying around in the car. And look inside the car. I mean, there's just a shitload of glass. And when I got done and out of the car, probably got done and I was sitting there, kind of like I was collecting my thoughts. Like look down and I'm covered with dirt, covered with glass, like there's glass on my arms, like everything had glass in it. And it was, you can see the windshield got knocked out. Well, that's all because if you look the bottom cowl of the hood, this whole area, in the video when it starts playing slow, you can see the hood got broke off the front, and at some point it got up, and then the car rolled over and it shoved it down inside the car. And that's where a bunch of shards of glass came off there, and then all the other windows broke out. So, yeah, Todd brought that up, that like putting your visor down, and then you'll see in the video, like I start with my visor down, but I didn't get it latched. So part of the way through the video, at the end, you'll see me turn my head, and the visor's up about this far. And that's just from momentum crashing. It got knocked up, and the visor moves pretty stiff. So the other thing with the visor I pay attention to is if there is a fire, and you have fire suit, you have everything else on, this is the only thing that's stopping your eyes from getting burned, is the visor. I mean, that's the other important aspect of it, is to protect you in a fire. And then a Hans, some type of, you can call them, everyone calls them Hans, but the proper term is like some type of a head and neck restraint. Matt had a different one. Just any type of a head or neck restraint is better than, way better than nothing. I mean, they're all going to do the same thing. Attach to your helmet, stop your neck from basically flopping around. That goes into your helmet. This is an Arai shell, so I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Arai. It's a Japanese brand. Arai and Shui are two Japanese brands. They still hand build all their helmets. The big difference between a high quality helmet and the lower quality one, they all still have to pass the same smell test. It's just, these are built with better materials. If you come up and look at this one, there's different colors of styrofoam and there are different densities for different areas of the helmet. One thing I'd make sure with your helmet is, and I've seen it at the sand hills before, where somebody will buy a brand new motorcycle helmet, and then they bring it and they want to use it. Motorcycle helmets are an M-rated helmet, and an M-rated helmet is not made for, first thing is they're not fireproof. Like any SA-rated helmet is Nomex, so if you get in a fire, it's fireproof. Motorcycle ones are not. Motorcycle helmets are not made to hit a roll cage or a sharp object. They're made to cover a more blunt area. So for autocross, other things, they'll let you use an M-rated helmet for SCCA, but I wouldn't recommend it. So the Hans device is the other thing. A good fire suit would be, I got lucky, didn't have a fire. I mean, that was short of everything else. One of the nitrous bottles in the trunk broke loose. I don't know where they found it, but it was out in the field. I have no idea how far it was from the car.
35 foot.
The bottles were the standard bottles you buy with nitrous bottles. It's like you buy a nitrous kit and they give you bottles to mount them. I didn't think too much about it, but that's what I used. Both bottles, if you look later on, open the trunk, both bottles are tore loose. Like one of them, the stainless steel strap, ripped the strap in half. The other one, it just ripped the mounts, ripped the stainless steel straps through the mounts. So both bottles were just projectiles at that point. They're 15-pound bottles, so like if they could have got someone in the car somewhere, the bottle's probably going to kill you.
You talked about the Hans device. I think that why it was so important is not only keep his head stable as we watch in the video, but look at his helmet. It's got gouges on the side of it, and there's mud packed into the vent. I guarantee you, if he wouldn't have had something holding his head in place, where's it going to go? It's going to get shoved. And that was one of the first things when he came over that next Sunday morning. I looked at that helmet, and I'm like, there's mud packed in this thing.
Yeah, there's mud packed in the vents. This helmet didn't have any scratches, nicks, nothing on it before 2 weeks ago. I mean, it didn't have a scratch anywhere. I put tear-offs on it, kind of problem last year. I put my hitch pins down, the hood flipped up, broke the windshield out. We just took the windshield out and I ran the sandals race with just tear-offs. And I just left them on there. The tear-offs have gouges in them. There's gouges on the side of the helmet, mud packed up into there. You look up in the headline, there's mud packed into there. Same thing with the visor. When you look at the full interior of the car, there's rocks, dirt, mud, grass, corn cobs, there's all sorts of shit mixed in with glass. So, with the Hans device, yeah, I agree with Todd. There's big gouges on the back. Don't know how they got there or when it happened, but when it was all done and said, a friend of mine's orthopedic surgeon, trauma surgeon Brian West, he thought I had got a CAT scan Saturday. I didn't. He didn't realize till Monday that I hadn't had one. So I went to the hospital Monday night, and that's when I went in and got a CAT scan of my head, neck, torso, and pelvis. Was what he wanted to do, just to check for bruised, like any internal organs, bruising, bleeding. Scott Schroeder, which I'm sure you know, he was the other doctor that looked at it, and they looked really close for like your blood vessels or arteries to see if there's any bruising, bleeding, which then that shows signs. How they interpret it to me is of head or neck trauma. That gets into another thing they brought up with me. Anytime you buy a higher quality helmet, they're going to weigh a lot less. So you can, cheaper one will still be SA 2015 rated, but it might weigh 75% more. Well, when you watch the video and you see how harsh it was, you got basically a bowling ball on top of your shoulder getting jerked around. So the Hans device, your head and neck restraint, is helping restrain that, but it does help to have a higher quality wired helmet. Because it's, I think we figured, or looking at the video, somewhere between 7 and 9 times is how the car rolled. Todd went out and looked at the dirt marks. The car never rolled over the dirt. The car hit the ground, hit the ground, hit the ground, and hit the ground. And when we get done, if you look on this side of the car, the amount of dirt that's packed in the rims on this side, the last time the car came down was still very violent and hard. It just slammed into the ground, stuck, and stopped. So your head is on top of your shoulders the entire time, and you can't control it. Right? I couldn't. The first time the car hit the ground hard, I had my hands on the steering wheel. Later that afternoon, I told Bill, I thought I took my hands off the steering wheel and just brought them up to my chest. You're watching the video. That did not happen. My hands were on the steering wheel, it hit hard the first time. My hands got thrown off up in the air. And at one point, I don't know where this hand went. I have window nets in the car, but you'll see one of the window nets, the dirt and stuff coming in, bent the window net and deformed it and shoved it in. And the window net came down, like halfway through the accident. So I can't see this hand, but I know it stayed in the car. It's not broken or nothing happened. My other arm, though, you'll see it flips all the way over into the passenger seat. And then you'll see it like up by the roof. And then you'll see I bring my hands back, grab the steering wheel, get a hold of it, hit again, and get my hands knocked off a second time. And then at some point I get them back on the steering wheel again. But I grabbed the steering wheel lower, and then that time I hung on and didn't let go. But I swore up and down to Bill that I didn't do that. And you watch the video, and it's everything I told him was complete bullshit. It was a lie. I mean, my hands were flailing around, but I kept going back to the steering wheel. So I thought things happened certain ways, and even when I went out and talked to Todd, I thought I went in the ditch a certain way. And I told him I could remember seeing brome grass go by the window. So I thought I was sitting in the car, and at that point it was all quiet and smooth. And I thought, well, this isn't going to be so bad. Because it was quiet and I was just kind of moving along. I thought I was sliding in the grass, because I could see brome grass getting tore off and going by the window. And the window hadn't been broken out yet. And then Todd informed me, like, no, when you went in the ditch, you got airborne right away. Well, and then we went out and looked at the crash site. Right now, brome grass is only this tall. There ain't no way in hell I seen brome grass out my door. I seen brome grass because I was sideways. Oh yeah, I was up in the air sideways, watching it go by, and I was looking at the ground. Yeah, so the things you think you see or think happen, just the violence and how hard it hits is incredible.
You said something about how many G's you and Bill figured out that first hit was. Do you remember what it was? You said something. Did you figure that out, Bill?
Some of the GoPro footage, you know, Dave's got some GoPros that record that, and I think you saw us on a 2.5, 3, right?
Yeah.
And oddly enough, that's kind of what I calculated the roll cage, the beams, if you will, that are going across it. So I'll get into that, but you know, it isn't as high as I would have thought. For as hard as he hit, you know, I was expecting maybe, you know, 4 to 5 G's. You know, and that would be 5 times the weight of the car. If the car is 3,500 pounds, you get kind of the idea. So I'd like to figure out if you can just make the structure around your head. This is what I believe after seeing it, rigid enough to take at least 2 to 3 G's without major deformation. I think you have a pretty good chance of surviving.
Over the car, but it's in the last 4 years. this is the third motor that's been in the car. And they haven't been out of the car because I've blown them up or had problems. It's because every iteration of the motor has gone up probably. I think the first one was 680 horsepower and it's jumped up roughly about 250 each time. Until like how it's sitting now, 2 weeks prior, 4 weeks ago, I think it was, we were at another dyno shop and we seen roughly around 1,380 horsepower to the rear wheels. So the amount of power I've gotten out of it and expected to get out of it has dramatically gone up. But at the same time though, at the start of that, when the first motor jumped way up in horsepower, the car basically it had a fairly decent cage. I would say a lot of cages that probably aren't dissimilar than what other people here have. But then the goals changed to, well, I want to go past 200, not just get to 200, I want past 200. And so that's where a lot of the long nights, napkins, calculations, where we talked with Bill was where at the same time while I'm spending money and building way more power, the safety was always probably more paramount then of figuring out, because I remember we had a lot of conversations over drinking beer of, you got to build the car to survive the crash. Like, I think the number we picked was 220 mile an hour, if I remember right. It was, I want to crash it going 220, but you have to get that into your mind as it's gonna, you don't want it to happen, but you have to build the car, or I wanted to build the car so that if that ever happens, I can get out and walk away. And the only way you can do that is to honestly tell yourself, I'm going to crash it at 200. What do I have to do to be safe to get out of that point? And so it's probably as much time and effort as I put on the engine, the drivetrain. We did look at all the safety aspects of like where the cage attached, like how the transmission's in the car. Like we had concerns about crashing at that speed, the motor coming loose, and the tranny coming loose, because the car only has 20 gauge floors, and the tunnel in the car is aluminum. So the floor of the car is 20 gauge steel, so that's, what is that, Wes? 20 gauge steel, 22,000?
Yeah.
18,000?
Yep.
So 18,000 thick floors.
Yep. And honestly, that's all we're required to use drag race wise. You know, I heard him speaking about, you know, impact bars, load. One of the things that we always base our stuff on is SFI. And I noticed one of the things I looked at your car was Wayne had obviously put a tag in it at some point.
Yeah.
And then you guys had started kind of adding bars, which is smart. I mean, we crashed 240 miles an hour with way less than that. And people get out. But what we don't have that you have is 3,500 pounds. You know, we crash at 2,350. So you being the mathematician, the G's and the energy and the way, and not only that, you know, for us, we've got guardrails. You all of a sudden ran off a road in a ditch, in the ground, and it's a whole different, you know that, and the multiplication changes versus I hit a wall and then I slowed down versus I rolled and rolled and rolled. It was interesting to hear you talk about one of the things people don't understand about an accident. You know, you talk about your hands. What used to scare me, and most people don't realize that with Wayne Lewis, I worked at HRA Safety Safari at national events. So funny cars catch on fire. I'm the minimum wage guy that was crazy enough to go in it. But one of the things you hear everybody talk about is the silence. When this thing is in the air, you don't even realize the motor's still running anything else. It's 100% quiet. And to me, that was always my fear, like, if this thing goes over, you know, hear the motor revving, I hear this, but believe it or not, and you can contest to that, that thing was dead silent inside, was it not? You know, you're thinking, you know, when I watched your video, saw you on the road, you know, I hear the RPM go up, but that thing starts rolling, it's quiet, then bang, you know, it's repetitive if you roll 6 times. So people don't really understand what goes on, and unfortunately, you've opened some major eyes and stuff, because I build roll cages every day. And the thing that I'm always chasing is not necessarily what's the greatest, latest thing, but what's the most safest. Sometimes under the shop in Lincoln, we struggle with getting people encouraged to, you know, before you spend 50 grand in a motor, why don't we build something safe first? Because down the road, we can continue to add power. But sooner or later, you're going to overpower what we've got. And when we talk to you about coming back and redoing something, it's like pulling teeth. You know, God, I want to go faster, but are you safe enough to go faster? 90% of the younger kids don't get that. They'd rather, okay, let me buy a bolt and put this in. Okay, great. But you know, if it's got a 20 gauge floor in it, where are the bolts in the cage going?
Expected it, and it came up quite a few times. The crashes you've seen over the years, even though the car was to a safety spec, what would you change to make it better or safer? So we had some input, looked at the rules for this event, the rules for the Sandals event, the rules for the Mojave Mile, Bonneville Salt Flats. I got a rule book for there. Looked at their rules, and then I looked at some FIA, like rally, road racing and rally cross rules, to try to combine everything of what will make a really safe car. Because the rules, there's rules, but no one really crashes cars to find out what you really need. So I kind of looked at all of them, and that's where Wes brought up the cage. The car has a full frame on it. When we did it, we brought the cage down, and the cage attaches to the rocker panels, and then it attaches to the frame rails. So coming up in a couple, 2-3 weeks, a month, we'll end up cutting the body off. And the plan is to take videos of all that, show more of the, once the sheet metal is off, the safety of the car. But once the body's off the car will still be drivable. It'll just be a roll cage and frame rail sitting there, and the car will be drivable. Because that's how the roll cage is attached. The seat mounting points in the car there's framework that's attached to the frame rails. That's what the seats mount. It's not like a standard, like the Cobra outside, where the seats mount to the floor of the car. The seats in here mount to the roll cage. So my floor is just cosmetic, basically, is what it is. Except where my feet are. Like he spoke, there's not really rules on floors of cars telling you what you need. But years ago, I had a good friend of mine who raced sprint cars and mini sprints. He crashed somehow, the floor came out of the car, his feet came out of the bottom of the car and broke both his ankles. He's got his ankles fixed and did that. But on all his sprint cars now, we add extra bars in there so his floor can't fall out. And when we did that, I call them stringers that run across on the bottom of my floor. So my floor is still 20 gauge, but where my feet and where the navigator's feet are, the floor can't just rip out and the feet can't go out. It's, I guess a lot of seem to be simple things, but took a lot of late night thinking of, well, if an accident happens this way, what can I do to prevent it? So it just took a lot of thought of making the car safe. At the same time, I'm making a lot more power, but I wanted the car to be safe, to be able to walk away, or like out in the sand hills, we looked at aspects there. There's a ton of places to go in the ditch and hit a big cottonwood tree. I guess I knew that could happen. This opened my eyes a little bit more of the distance you got off the road. I think it was, 550 some feet from the road out and 300 feet out.
Well, you're only 100 foot from the road. But where you started rolling from where you took off, and I should have wrote that down. I've got it at home, but
I think stepped it off was like 700 feet from start to finish.
yeah, I think that you're pretty close to that. Yeah.
So I mean, from the start of where shit started going bad, it took a long time to stop. I mean, once it finally come to a complete stop. And like Wes said, everything happened in slow motion. Went in the ditch. I thought I seen grass. I thought I was sliding. It's like, oh shit, this ain't even too bad. My first thought was, hopefully I just slide to a stop and they just got to drag me out of the ditch. And then it hit the first time. I mean, like hard, really hard. Went in the air, silence again, and then it hit the second time, and then it hit the third time. And I was thinking, okay, we'll be slowing down. But it kept going to whatever, the 7, 9 more times. And the last time it hit, I was sitting there thinking, it's like, shit, the last 2 times there's still a lot of force. Was like, I don't know when this is going to stop. Because it was hitting so hard each time. And then it stopped the last time. I was like, shit, that was hard.
Then you scrubbing speed off as it goes.
Yeah.
You know, it feels as hard, but it isn't. So that first initial hit depends on where it was. That's the one that's hard. And then it just, as your velocity decreases, then you get less.
Todd brought a good thing up. Like you would have thought this would have been 180 miles an hour, but the last final rollover from where it dug into dirt, flipped up in the air one more time, and then landed on this side where the wheels and the car dug in. Like you can look at the bottom of the car. The rocker panel was smashed up under the car, so it took a ton of force to move a lot of the sheet metal on the car the way it is. But the second to the last hit to the last one, I think when I went out and stepped it off, I think it was 30 feet from the last time. So it wasn't as if it was rolling and landing softly. Like it was 30 feet, probably roughly from that wall, at least what, over to here. That was the last time in the air hitting the ground. So the violence of the crash, even at 140 or 130, whatever we think it happened at, it's hard to say because I came to the event in the morning planning on, or hoping I had the fastest car there. Kind of walked around, looked at all the cars, talked to people, and then did my first run and I had a different set of tires, and I didn't like them because I was having problems with the car spinning the tires at 145. Like it spun in first gear, spun in second gear, spun in third gear, and it was spinning in fourth gear anytime I'd get on the gas at 145. So I was like, oh, I just drove to the finish line, went back, switched to tires that I knew I'd gone fast in and I liked. Changed one thing on the front suspension to make it a little more stable. Went out and my next run was going to be my, I can't remember how Todd described it to me years ago. Your test run, or Dylan described it to me too. Go easy on this run to figure out that your car is safe. Like what's the wind doing? You don't have any vibration in any tires. Your alignment's good because everything on this car is hand built. So it's like, go see how it feels, but don't do anything dangerous. And that was one of the wife's things. Don't do anything stupid. And,
Well, Dave, you brought up a good point. You didn't want to do anything stupid, but how fast were you going on your second run?
yeah, my second run, I took off. Flag guys can probably attest. I just left kind of slow, didn't spin the tires, flipped the clutch, went through first gear, short shifted like at 5,000 RPM. Shifted to second gear, and I think I might have went to like 52, a little bit more. And the car was no vibrations, everything was good. Shifted to third gear. I shifted into third gear, probably at about 3/8 of a mile. And knowing the car, I'm usually shifting way shorter than that. Shifted from third to fourth, past the half mile mark, probably 500 feet, 750 feet past the half mile mark. I didn't ever put the car all the way to the floor until I was in fourth gear. By that point, I was like, oh, I'm shifted third to fourth. I probably shifted, I thought, at 170. So I'm like, no vibrations, everything feels good. So then I put it the rest of the way to the floor, went across the finish line, turned around, met everyone. Then I found out I won 196. And so I was like,
Nice test pass.
that's initially what I thought.
Shakedown.
I thought I went 180, but knowing what the car did, I was like, oh, 196. It's like, it's got a lot of mile an hour left. And that was naturally aspirated. Like no nitrous, no nothing. Just hadn't decided to use that yet because I wanted the car stable and safe first. So Went 196 and thought, oh yeah, I can go well past 200 on the motor alone. And so the next run, like went up, got the nitrous ready, started off. Probably used the nitrous a little bit in first gear, used it all the way in second gear, and right up until the point I was shifting, the car's driving straight. And all I'm really thinking at that point is I'm looking way down the road because you're covering so many feet a second that I was looking way down the road, the car's going straight. It's got great traction, I'm not pedaling it, it's just hooked up. And I'm thinking, this is going to be well over 200 because everything's going so good. And then all hell broke loose. But it just kind of goes to show you, anything can happen at any time and you don't think it's going to happen to you. You don't think you're going to have a problem. You think everything's going to be great. And in a tenth of a second, like I told Bill, I didn't even think I countersteered because it happened so fast. I was 100% positive I didn't even steer. That whatever happened, I went in the ditch, and going back and looking at the video, I did countersteer. Like I had my hands 90 degrees. At one point I could see I put my foot on the brake. Why I was countersteering, knowing that this is not savable. Like what I was feeling with the seat of my pants, and the car was stepping out, I was going to go in the ditch and wreck, and my foot was on the brake. So we went back out and looked at the black marks. You can see where I blocked the front tires up, knowing the ass end has already stepped out, and everything's going bad from that point. Tenth of a second before that, everything was perfect. Like no thought of anything going bad at all. Ahead, it could be you could crash at any point. Anything could happen.
What was the difference in tires? You said you switched tires. What were the tires?
I was using a drag radial, and they told me to start at 14 PSI, and I know from talking to a lot of people at drag racing, they run lower pressures like that and go up to where you don't have traction. I wasn't willing to start at such a low pressure knowing I was going to go over 200. Knowing that the tires that were on here are completely stable going 200.
Was that just the first pass on those tires that
yeah.
you had?
And I started at 20 PSI, and that's why they were spinning. And so I just decided at that point, I'm not going to take a risk and go down on pressure and do something that I didn't know how they would feel. It was just a big unknown to me, so I was like, I'm not going to take the risk.
Did you think you were going to get more traction out of those tires versus the tires you had been running before? Or
yeah. I have no doubt I would have had better traction with them. It's just, I was...
Didn't want to spend the time to sort it out.
Was it because of the top end that you felt unstable, or was it just getting off the line you felt that they were not?
In my mind, I didn't want to go all the way down to 14 PSI because I run these tires at 28 on the rear and 32 on the front.
Those are the R8s or R7s?
R7s.
R7s.
Yeah. So I knew going down where they're telling me you need to be at 14 PSI, I'm like, I don't want to go that low. I didn't know. It was too unexpected. I didn't know what the feel was going to be, and I didn't want to try it.
A drag radial will change when you start getting down that far. You got to realize most drag radials were made for drag racing. So we're only in them for an eighth mile, and if you notice, most of them we only run for an eighth mile. You know, a quarter mile on a drag radial is almost obscene nowadays. But that's what I was going to ask you, Todd. Is there a reason we don't do burnouts to heat tires up, just so we don't destroy the road or something?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest problem we have is trying to, keep the road safe. I've been talking to Kyle off this for a bit, trying to figure out some different options because he's talked about, if we could do some burnouts, warm up the tires. Is there something we can do? We've talked about putting the metal plate down, having something to just do a burnout, get those tires warm on the back. I mean, it's a little bit more work, but as you've seen, we had a number of cars that were there that, if anybody's seen Chad Riley's run from last year, he's spinning all the way up to
he's spinning high gear.
90 mile an hour, and the car finally hooked up. Now, would it make it safer if we did a burnout, got those tires a little sticky? I don't know. That's something way above my pay grade.
Do you think it's a big deal to even prep the road? like a VHT spray or something?
No, I don't think we want to do that. The only thing we do for prepping the road is we get the gravel off.
Right. I mean,
Me and Chad spoke about it. All the guys that go really fast, they end up talking to each other and you trade phone numbers and trade data. Me and Chad talked a lot in the last year on different things, and that's one thing we talked about is you're going to get hooked up and it's going to be like a drag race. You're just going to go faster.
Yep.
But then when you do lose traction, because you're not going to maintain it all the way to the full mile. So we felt it's kind of a little bit better that when you have this much power, you have to learn to what it feels like when it spins and drive.
Yep.
Well, John, you've done the Texas Mile. Now that guy just broke 300 mile an hour with the Ford GT, and I don't know if anybody's seen that car take off, but I don't think he ever spent the tire in that.
That was it.
Yeah.
He's just in
So-
control of his dog.
So I don't know if even really having a burnout. Do they have burnouts down there?
They let them chirp the tires or clean the tires off.
Yeah, we clean. I do a lot with Ron Moen at Vengeance,
Yeah.
just through the GM guys. And you know, they're with Eddie. I can't remember Eddie's name, but he's got that white Corvette. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's a crazy piece of material too. But most of the time, I just see them guys cleaning tires. You know what I'm saying? Some type of wipe off or a small dry hop of some time just to shake the tire off. The biggest problem is you get to places where, like you said, the gravel is probably the biggest enemy out there, and I never even thought about that. I mean, we have to keep in mind, this isn't a clean strip. This is something that people drive on every day, farmers, rocks are falling, tractors are going, so cleaning the road itself is probably 1,000%, you know, in mind to do before we even go down. But now that I'm thinking in my mind, the gravels probably would be our biggest enemy because it's like throwing marbles out there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
No, we
do
sweep
it
it
in
and we
the
blow it
drivers,
off. We've talked about a guy over at Seward's got a broom we can stick on the front of a Bobcat, but we've swept it, and the guy here in town's got a big blower that he hooks up to, and we just walk down and we blow all the corners and we sweep them. So I mean, we try to do our part, but again, this discussion, you know how many times I've had this discussion with people, why are we not doing burnouts? Would it make it safer? I don't know.
Right. And I
The
agree.
road here is pretty good. Like
It
once you
is.
get up to speed, you seem to have traction.
Yeah.
At Sand Hills, that one, like last year I noticed, like you get out to a half mile and driving a regular vehicle, you don't notice there's like a small dip at a half mile. You can't even feel it at 65. 180 though, it's there. You feel it.
Yeah, that's it.
And it goes, it's like 2 or 3 of them, I can't remember how many. Me and
I think it's
Chad
more like a 3/4 mile out there, isn't it?
Wow. You'll see it flip around. You'll see like a stream of the nitrous going out and back and forth. You can't see the column per se, but you see the stream. And like now you can see just like the showers of glass falling. A lot of the noise you hear is the nitrous falling. That's what that is.
That's half driving. So fire road, that's how
At the end of the video, where I'm awake, everything's done, and we were talking about the fire. Like I reached down, shut all the switches off, pull all the power. It took 45 seconds for the first fire to begin. So I was by myself for 45 seconds. But after it came to a stop, and I shut everything off, the nitrous bottles went down, I couldn't smell anything burning. I thought I was okay. Then I kind of just sat there and kind of relaxed and figured out what the hell happened. And if there would have been a fire, that's the time when the fire would flare up. But at that point, I was kind of like, oh shit.
Here's the one you guys need to watch. Watch his hands in this video. When he sent me this one, I was amazed at how much. I mean, Dylan and I both looked at this and said we were going to have armor strength. There's just, you gotta have something.
You can see my fire suit's black, but my seats say Sparko. The other thing to think about is like the violence in there. My seats fit tight. You can see half of the seat where it says Sparko.
Can we run that one back again? I wanted that piece of.
They keep coming back to
Come
you.
back
to
You're
you.
focused on trying to control
I
it.
had my eyes open and I didn't know I was doing it, but I remember having my eyes
Well,
open.
your reflexes, you're not thinking about it, but why are you just watching your hands how you
But
they
each
know
time
where
they
they're
get,
supposed to go.
the violence of the crash knocks them off.
Yeah.
Like I guess I can't understate how violent it is. I mean, it is incredibly violent.
And this is only at 130.
Yeah.
2 cars at our event didn't go over 130.
I mean,
Only 2.
the noise that you hear, like how hard it's hitting, is just. The video here picks it up, but being in there, having it real life, it's loud, it's violent, you're getting thrown around. You can see where this is the side of my seat, and it comes up fairly high, and it's about halfway down my leg. When I sit in the car, my seat holds me pretty tight. But if Allison can back it up, you can see my other leg's over here. At some point, both of my legs are on that side of the seat. Like they're shoved all the way over to that side. You see that half of the entire seat over there, so you can tell my belts are stretching. That's one thing I didn't bring up yet. Like everything after safety gear is all Sparco. So I got back hold of the Sparco rep and told him, sent him the video, said, hey, had this crash. So after the crash, like he's like, belts get thrown away.
Yeah.
Same as my
Just
helmet.
like harnesses for working at heights when somebody's falling and it reject, you gotta get new belts.
Belts thrown away, the helmet is done. The seats will come back out and they check the gel coat to look for cracks to see if there's anything on there. I expect to find stuff on the seat. The seats, they're fiberglass carbon fiber, so they have 2 points where they mount. They're they tell you, do not drill any other holes anywhere else in the seat. That will void anything that they'll do for safety, because you're compromising the structure of it. The back of my driver's seat, because I don't ever plan on having somebody in the passenger seat go this fast with me, there's a pad on there that comes up and it rests about right on your shoulder blades and touches the seat, and it's padded and it's so many square inches. It doesn't bolt to the seat. Its only purpose is to come up and touch it, so the seat can't collapse backwards because your belts are pulling down and back. So it's to keep you, the seat, everything to the structure tight, which I found where, like, Sparco's really good going through their book showing you how you mount your seat belts, because it just doesn't, putting them in, I guess not willy-nilly, but if you put them in and they go down or too high, if you get the angles wrong, the seat belts aren't going to do what they're designed to do. Same thing on your shoulder belt. If it's going way too far below your shoulder, you're probably going to break your collarbone or your shoulder because it's pulling down. Back, and I think it's 15 degrees. So there's a window where it comes back and goes into where they want you to attach.
I thought it was interesting too, Dave. Like that head and neck restraint, I just got that from Schroep, just showed up yesterday, and I was going through the manual or the instructions on it. I mean, it talks about your shoulder belts, where the adjuster buckle part is. It needs to be in a certain spot in reference to the bottom of the head and neck restraint too. I think it was 1.5 inches below and 3 inches above. It has to be in that area, which I didn't know.
Yeah, because of an impact, think about where those things are. We go through a drag race wise all the time, because the first thing you do is strap in a Cordova thing and you pull them tight. Well, if you've got the wrong belt on this right here, imagine what that does in impact, or even up here. All of a sudden you hit a wall and you're getting the belt, but also that metal piece that's there is into your body now. So it's taking the impact.
Todd brought up a good thing. It's Renee, and what's the other girl's name that checks belts? Melissa. Okay, they come up, ever since I've been doing SORC or Todd's event, I pull my belts as tight as I can possibly get them. And then when I pull up there, she take it in the car, they check them, and my belts end up being longer. And I grab them with both hands, pull down. And it's hard when you're sitting in a containment seat to get in your belt. So I just take the other end of the belt, loop it up over my forearm. After she tightens me, I tighten myself, she checks it, and then I fold her before. I want her to stay there, and I check it again.
And roll situation, and I've been told no, you can't do it, but it almost to me should be mandatory. And I don't know. I know they say I can't do it. In my opinion, it should be mandatory. Any rollover like this, a CAT scan is done. I mean, here's one of the head surgeons in Nebraska. He's worked races at Le Mans and stuff like that, and that's the first thing he said: you need a CAT scan. You know, and I know we can't force Dave to get a CAT scan, but in a situation where we're racing in this, either you do it, I don't know. That's my feeling. You do it my way, you don't race.
Right.
I mean, I hate to say that and be that person, and I know I've had numerous people tell me I can't do it, but I just feel like that should be something that should almost be mandatory.
How Todd's describing it is when I went and seen Monday night is probably by the time this all gets done and said, it's like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock Monday night before I'm talking to Dave and Scott Schroeder. And the reason why they wanted the CAT scan of my head was because I knew I had at least a slight concussion, but you're not gonna roll that violently that many times and not have a concussion.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Bill said, your brain's surrounded by fluid. Your first sudden stop, you're gonna get something, whether it's major, minor, something's happening. But Dave and Scott were really adamant. They wanted to look at bleeding around arteries, anything in the neck. That's what they were really concerned with was internal organ injuries, anything. I can't remember what Dave told me the amount of pressure or force it takes to tear an artery. You might know. It's really, really low.